Hello and welcome to Women in Retail Talks, the podcast where C-suite executive women in the retail space share their stories of professional growth, leadership development, personal journeys, and more. I'm Christina Stidham, editor and producer of our show, and I'm hopping on to wish you a happy holiday season and introduce today's special episode. We're replaying a conversation from earlier this year featuring Andrea Albright, Executive Vice President and Chief Growth Officer International at Walmart and operating partner at Massmart. She was interviewed by Women in Retail co-founder Melissa Campanelli. They discuss how Andrea creates psychological safety for her teams at Walmart, how she drives operational efficiency across its global network, her use of the radical candor leadership technique, her belief that empathetic feedback is a gift, and much more. This episode was originally published on March 18th, 2025. The Women in Retail team will be back with new episodes in 2026.
Hello, everyone. I'm Melissa Campanelli, the co-founder of Women in Retail Leadership Circle, which is a membership-based community of executive women at leading retailers and brands. And we are thrilled and excited to be here with Andrea Albright, who is the Executive Vice President of Sourcing at Walmart and also the operating partner at Massmart. And she's also one of Women in Retail Leadership Circle's 2025 Top Women in Retail honorees. So we're so thrilled that we have you on the podcast today and can't wait to chat about some of the topics that you discussed in your Q&A and the report and other stuff as well. So welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Great. I'm so excited. I'm just going to jump right in. I know that you lead a team dedicated to delivering products to Walmart customers from around the world. Huge job and huge responsibilities. So what strategies have you implemented to ensure that Walmart does this while maintaining operational efficiency?
I mean, as you can imagine, we're talking about products from car tires to bananas, t-shirts to televisions, right? So it's a wide range of products. And we have associates, as you mentioned, around the world who are doing this for a lot of different retail markets. So we really had to think about the simplification of our strategy. I can't have a 30-page document or, even more than a paragraph to describe what I need the teams to go do. So we really simplified and got down to trust, value, and resiliency. And everything that we need the teams to focus on are focused on those three things. And those three words translate unbelievably well, regardless of the country that we're working in. And trust is everything you would expect it to be. It's, are we doing right by our customers? Are we doing what we said we would do for our suppliers? Are we sourcing in a responsible and ethical way? And are we doing it in a way that is regenerative for the future? So trust embodies all of those elements. And resilience, I mean, it's more important now than ever. This was born out of COVID when the supply chains were unbelievably challenged and pressured through there. But it's not just about mitigating risk and making sure that we've got multiple sources of supply. It's also maximizing opportunity. Where do I have innovation? Where can I shorten my supply chain? Where do I have new partners who are investing in automation? And how do I think about partnering with them to do long-term contracts so they can invest in new geographies of excellence to have their manufacturing? And then last but certainly not least, my team is fantastic at this. It's value. Save money, live better. That's what we do at Walmart. We bring affordable products and we make it more accessible to everyone around the world. And that could be a really high-end product, or it could be an opening price point item with a smaller pack type. Regardless of those things, we want to bring exceptional value to our core customers. So those are kind of the three things that we bring to life with an unbelievable discipline around supporting our people through technology and making sure that those efficiencies are brought to life through our people, our talent, and technology to help support that.
Hmm. Wow. That's a great way of looking at it, kind of distilling it to like the most important points and then just making sure that they're executed, in each sort of task. I feel like that is a super way of looking at it.
Well, you have to think about, when you're in that many different geographies with that many different languages, and, those words can be open to interpretation if you're not thinking through that. One of the things that I talked about with my team when we were in Thailand was regeneration. That actually translated to newborn baby. So we had to
Oh,
even simplify that and go, okay, what do we mean? The the planet is precious, or, people are important. So, like, how do you get to distill it down to the most simplest form that is universally translated and understood so you can make sure that your team is all marching in the same direction?
Wow, that is a great story. I'm sure you have a million of stories like that. That's crazy. But yeah, you just have to be you have to think about the big picture too. I mean, all the different people that you're dealing with and countries and super impressive.
I mean, you think about, if my team is focused on cost of goods, it can't be the only thing they're focused on. So you had to create this framework to create a healthy tension. So all three of those elements come into play, because you have to empower your associates to make decisions on your behalf. When you've got that many items that they're working with suppliers on, how do you make sure that when they're weighing the decisions of this country, this factory, this product, that value, trust, and resiliency really cleanly comes through on how they need to make those decisions?
Yeah, great. And actually, I'm excited to jump into the next question, which kind of dovetails with what you were talking about, which is, your team and building environments of trust and psychological safety. And I read somewhere that you use this technique called radical candor, which is like a great book that we've actually all read at my company. It's called, I think it was by Kim Scott, right? So, I would love for you to describe what that is and the impact it has had on you, or has had on collaboration and innovation at Walmart.
No, it's a great question, and I couldn't, double down on this more than it's probably the single most important thing that I think has differentiated my leadership journey over the last 10 to 15 years. I wholeheartedly believe that the environment that you create will set the tone for what your team is able to accomplish in the long run. And before you can ever get to a strategy, you have to have the right environment to get to the right strategy. And then you can get into ways of working and org design and all the KPIs and objectives that come with the
Mm,
transformation. But the environment that you create sets a tone for that. And so psychological safety for me means that we're teaching people how to have this level of radical candor in an environment where that's not necessarily the norm anymore. So you think about the dynamic that we're dealing with as an industry, as a global population with social media, right? We don't know how to constructively communicate or disagree respectfully, but say the hard things, but still walk out of the room in violent agreement about the path forward. Like, we don't know how to constructively do that anymore. And we've had to teach the teams how to communicate effectively. How do you respectfully disagree? How do you have empathy for the person across the table from you? So you can have those disagreements, but still walk out as a team. And that
mm.
goes through this whole process. We've partnered with the University of Arkansas on it, Dr. Stovernek, on laying out what does that framework look like. And I teach my leadership team how to do that. And then we typically go one or two levels below the organization with our change agents or our high potential talent and teach them how to do it, because they can model the change. They're the catalyst to bring that to life. And that really starts to allow the information to flow. And you do exercises like, "This is my biggest failure. This is my what I'm most proud of," and it is almost never something you've actually accomplished at work. It's usually a personal journey or something with
Mm.
people's families, or something outside of the office. And when you know somebody that deeply and have seen them in some of their weakest moments, you can't help but have empathy, even if you totally disagree with the ideas that they're proposing. And so that foundational work allows us to get into the strategy work and actually solve the problems that matter. It's not surface. It's not projecting an image that we want the organization to see. We're not trying to manage a message. We're actually trying to solve root cause problems, because we've created an environment where it's okay and it's safe to say that something's broken. If your teams don't feel like they can be honest about the thing that's causing a breakdown or causing friction, then you'll never actually get a meaningful strategy that will be transformative for the teams and for the organization. And so that's why we spend so much time on it on the upfront, because I mean, you kind of go slow to go fast all the way through the organization and make sure that the biggest scariest, hardest problems that have been lingering for some time are actually identified and brought to life.
That is so exciting to me. I just love I agree with everything that you're saying. I just think it's such a great way of looking at business. I do want to dive in a little bit into the empathy part. So is the idea that if you have empathy for the other person, you have a relationship which allows you to be supportive in your feedback. Is that kind of the idea? Or
Yeah,
I would
that's
just
part
love
of
to
it.
dig into that a little.
Yeah, that's part of it. I mean, one of the things that we talk about when we go through psychological safety, and it's one of our core expectations of behavior, one of the kindest things you can do for somebody else is to give them feedback, good, bad, or ugly, right? And if you don't give them that feedback, you're robbing them of the opportunity to get better or to reach their full potential. And if you take that approach and that mindset for the people across from you, even if you're not friends, even if you don't like them or you totally disagree with them, that empathy allows you to lead with kindness, and that kindness allows you to say the hard thing or the challenging thing or the thing that you're afraid of so they can reach their full potential. You completely
Mm,
reframe why the feedback's not about you telling, getting something off your chest. The feedback is about making them better and having empathy from what is their life journey, what is their background, what is their context that's been set forth that is causing them to think or behave or react the way that they are, and then you have that kindness in your interactions.
mm. So, so interesting. Can you talk about a time when this concept of radical candor really was, you saw it working in action, like an
Oh, yeah.
example?
Oh, yeah. I think as leaders, we all have moments in our career where you feel like you're failing, or you feel like, hey, I'm not breaking through on something, or you think you're doing really well, and then you get hit upside the head with feedback that you're just like taken aback on. And so there have been moments in my career. I'll tell you an early one on when I first started to lead people. I was a director, and at that level, you're rewarded for doing the work. You're not rewarded for leading the work. And then when you flip to leading a team, you keep doing the thing that you've always done unless you have somebody who's giving you good guidance or good counselor or role model good behavior to lead the team. And I was in a situation where, I'd built a career, I'd gotten promoted quickly by doing the work. And so when I started leading people, I was micromanaging them. I was
Mm,
getting into a level of detail that was really their job. And fortunately, one of my direct reports pulled me aside and she's like, "Look, if you're going to do this, you don't need me. If you're going to do my job, you don't need me in my job. Here's the behaviors that you're exhibiting that are frustrating to me." And then I replayed that and I'm like, man, if my boss did that to me, I would feel absolutely demotivated, not trusted,
mm,
like I'm getting their full potential. And so that was a moment of failure for me that I reflect on and I'm like, man, I don't ever want to be that person. And sometimes when you're in the toughest parts of your career, whether you've got a leader that you don't trust or bad environment or, all the things, you learn the most. Some of my toughest times in my career are where I actually formed the type of leader I wanted to be through that process. And feedback is a gift. And if you reframe it and think of it from a kindness standpoint and how hard it must be for the other person to tell you the hard thing, you have that empathy for them and they have that
mm,
empathy for
mm.
you, and you actually get to meaningful growth from it.
Love that. That's so great. What a great example. Still kind of on this topic, you have talked about mentoring being part of your leadership style. So, how does this sort of tie into what we're talking about with radical candor? And how does this style help you to create this sort of open and approachable environment?
Great question. I think you can't be a really good mentor for anybody if you aren't giving good feedback and you aren't being transparent. I mean, you can talk to them about how you build a career and teach them, but you've got to be comfortable to say, "Hey, I've heard this about you, and or I've seen this behavior, or here's the things that are being said about you, not to you," and that's part of that radical candor. I think mentoring is so critical because been so fortunate and blessed in my career that I had other leaders who saw something in me and they invested their own time. And my career, my behaviors, my skill sets, my leadership style, they're all a culmination of a lot of different people who've invested time in me along my journey. And for me, that is going to be the mark that I leave behind. It's not, the businesses I transform, the goals I hit, it's gonna be the leaders who come behind me that I've mentored or I've been a part of their career journey in some way, shape, or form. And that's why it's probably my favorite thing to do as a leader is to invest time in people and think
Mm,
about how I help support them and their career objectives and their goals.
mm. Yeah, I mean, that really, a good leader should be a mentor. That's sort of what your role is.
Completely. Completely.
So we kind of just talked a little bit about a lesson that you learned as a leader, or a lesson that changed you, I guess, as a leader by the feedback that you got from your associate. But maybe you could talk about some other leadership lessons that you've learned over, throughout your years.
Yeah, one I like to talk about a lot and that really kind of transformed me and my core. And I say transformed me, it stuck with me for a while. And it was a leadership lesson taught to me by Greg Foran. He was a Walmart US CEO probably 5 or 6 years ago is when he left to go be the CEO of Air New Zealand. But he was an incredible retailer and he taught by example, walking a store, walking a modular, spending time in the DCs. But what struck me was not the hands-on detail he got into. It was how he treated me the same way he treated a cashier, the same way he
Mhm.
treated another executive, the same way he treated the woman who was serving his coffee at breakfast. There was an unbelievable level of respect and gratitude that he had with all of us. He didn't change his personality depending on his relationship with you or where your socioeconomic status was. He was just a genuinely kind, warm person to everybody, and you can tell a lot by a person, by how they treat their waitress, how they treat, the lowest in their company or the highest in their company, and it does their personality change. And that really stuck with me. I learned so much by listening to him, watching him with associates, watching him with just everyday ordinary people, and it was one of my best lessons that I'll never forget.
Yeah, treating everybody equally. That I'm sure that was so inspiring to see it, to be around. What can you repeat what his name was again? I just want to make sure I have it.
His name is Greg Freeman. He's the CEO of Air New Zealand, and you can often see him on LinkedIn. He's pushing the coffee cart, serving coffee, and he's the CEO of Air New Zealand. He's just such a servant leader, checking bags and tagging bags when he first
Yeah,
started, just to learn the airline business. So, yeah, he's incredible. Definitely a definition of a servant leader.
that's awesome. Well, we're gonna wrap it up pretty soon here. Unfortunately, it's been so great chatting with you, but product sourcing is what you live and breathe. It's a huge part of Walmart. So could you talk a little bit about some of the trends that you're tracking right now in product sourcing?
Yeah, I think it's no secret that disruption is kind of happening all the time. It started with COVID. Natural disasters are happening, tariffs are happening, geopolitical disruption. So that's one thing that I think we're tracking at a macro level all the time to think about new ways of sourcing products, new locations of sourcing product. How do we build more resiliency in our supply chain? And how do we shorten lead times or completely reimagine the route to market from raw material to finished product to make sure that we can weather any disruption that occurs. The second thing I would say is, consumers are smart. They're constantly looking for value, and in a climate of uncertainty, they're really leaning on heavily on private brands to
Mm,
offer them value and quality and innovation. And so that's a really interesting trend, and that's universal. That's not just a U.S. thing. I'm seeing that in Mexico, in Canada, in China, in all of our retail markets in Africa in which we operate. So that's really cool. And then the last thing that I would say when you tend to have uncertainty like this, people are looking for things in their everyday life that surprise and delight them. So what are those little luxuries that you look for in a grocery store? It could be a new flavor of a cake bite. It could be some kind of luxury in your coffee. It could be a really incredible fabric that you're getting on a blanket or a throw or a towel. But what are those the kind of unexpected luxuries that can surprise and delight customers in an incredible way? And customers really respond to that. They get really excited about those pieces of it. So those are kind of the big three things that I would say are happening in aggregate. There's a lot of nuance in each of the individual markets that
mm.
are incredible and different flavors and different things that we're learning across each of the regions. But at a macro level, those are the big three.
Super, super interesting. Thank you for sharing that. I would love to, Andrea, get as we close out here, like, what would you say your favorite thing is about being in retail, this crazy industry that we're all in?
Well, I love the disruption. I love the complexity that comes with retail, but probably my favorite thing about being in retail is just being around people. Like, you can't help but love people and love what are their behaviors? Why are they thinking this? What are they buying? How are they shopping? How do I need to teach my associates? Like, you're always in these interactions with associates and customers and people, and you learn little micro lessons every single day from, checking out customers at Store 100 across the street from our home office, or spending time in factories and learning why this family decided to build this company 60 years ago and what they've done to transform it. And so all of those little micro lessons that come with being in retail, I think are invaluable and have really enriched my life.
Mm, great, great. Thank you so much. Well, Andrea, it was so great chatting with you. I feel like I learned so much. I'm excited to see the work that you do and continue to see all your successes. And I'm so happy that you're part of our top women list this year. And it's been great chatting with you. Thank you so much for taking your time today.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks for listening. For more information on this podcast, please go to womeninretail.com/podcasts for show notes. Women in Retail Talks is available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and Spotify. Make sure to subscribe on our podcast channel page as well. If you've enjoyed this episode, please take a few moments to rate and review our show. Lastly, if you're a female retail leader interested in joining our community at Women in Retail Leadership Circle, visit womeninretail.com/apply. Thanks, and until next time, this has been Women in Retail Talks.